I'm excited to welcome this week's Tiara Talk Show guest, writer Kitt Shapiro, to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on the show because, as we were just talking about, I think one of my favorite subjects for animated films is Emperor's New Groove, because I think you can't talk too much about it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that you have to talk about all the time. So
I know. It's such a fun film.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe it's been 20 years because I remember being in the movie theater to see it. Like, I clearly remember the day I went to see it, and I was like, "This is so different," and I loved it. I was like,
when you contacted me and said it'd been 20 years, I was just floored because I know my mother died almost 11 years, 10 and a half years ago, but still, it didn't seem like it was that long ago before she died when she did Emperor's New Groove. Just so 20 years. Time just really does fly. I know it's cliche, but it really does go by quickly.
It really does, and I think there's not a chance that you can mention the film without mentioning your mother, Eartha Kitt, who was the voice of Yzma, and I think she's one of the best, in my opinion, the best Disney villains of the 20th century, 21st century, especially with Disney films coming to it, and I just find that her character is so, it's such a unique character blend. I don't think people are expecting that, but then again, I was just thinking, how could they not cast your mother with the wonderful voice that she had? That just would be the first thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, put her in an animated film.
Well, it's so funny you say that because that is, in fact, how they did cast her, is that they had come to New York City for some project and they had gotten in a taxi cab. And at the time, there were these public service announcements in New York City taxi cabs about safety and buckling your seatbelt. And they had many different celebrities doing various, little, snippets of something that they would say that was sort of unique to them. And my mother's, what I believe it was, is that this is Eartha Kitt. And then she would do her famous growl. And she said, cats have 9 lives, but you only have 1. And, buckle up for safety. And it was something very short and simple. Every cab had a different celebrity. And I guess they were by the medallion on the cabs. That's how you knew who was in what celebrities they got assigned, numbers and letters. So they happened to get the director and producer happened to get into a taxi that had my mother's PSA. And the second the door closed, they heard my mother's voice and they looked at each other and said, "That's it. That's Yzma."
But it was funny because the original film was known as Kingdom of the Sun. Correct. And your mother signed up for the film around 96, 97. So technically, if we're being very specific, this is the first animated project she did before Wild Thornberrys, which I was also a big fan of. So when I saw that on your mom's list, I was like, oh my God.
That is correct. As well as the Magic School Bus.
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that one too.
there was another one too. I can't think of which one it was, but so she signed on. It was the creative team behind the original, prior to the Emperor's New Groove was the creative team from The Lion King. Mm-hmm. And so it was going to be, a sort of set into Peru and about Incas, and it was really going to be very much deeper, and it was going to be typically a musical, like many Disney, animated films have been. And so that's what she signed on to be. And they had told her that as Elton John had done the music for The Lion King, Sting was doing the music for, at the time, what was known as the Kingdom of the Sun.
And I think that this project was a little bit more darker. Wouldn't you agree? Because I read the final story plot that somebody had released, and I saw the Sweatbox, which was the unreleased documentary from Sting's wife about the project. And it looked like it was much more darker. Like Yzma was the female equivalent to Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog, because she was dealing with technically dead things.
Yes.
So, yeah, wouldn't you say it's a little bit more darker of a project? Do you remember when you guys read the original script, and what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think so. There was a lot of historical, facts related to it, as far as the actual peoples of the Incas, and going back and learning a little, the history of that period, the Peru. And so my mother was fascinated by that, and she loved, it's so funny when you play a character, or when you portray the villain, even though it may be a very dark subject, and the film itself was going to be dark, the villain always has the most fun. And so my mother felt that, that she could bring a level of a little levity to it, as she does to everything, just because of of who she was and how she interprets words. So she wasn't really, and the creative process is so detailed, and there's so many people involved, that I think that, she really wasn't turned off by the depth of it, or the darkness, the dark quality to it in the beginning. She was actually very, very drawn to the knowledge that the creators had gotten from visiting Peru as many times as they had, and what they, the history that they had learned. So she was actually, looking forward to whatever came her way, because as she always did.
It looked like she was having a real fun time, because there are some behind the scenes footage of her recording her dialogue for the original Kingdom of the Sun. Now I have to ask, her sidekick character was originally Soupy, if I'm saying the name correctly. Hopefully I am, cross my fingers. But Harvey Fierstein was the voice of her cohort. Did she ever record anything with him specifically, or did they ever meet?
They had met, unrelated to this project. But no, I mean, as I'm sure many people maybe don't, but that most animated projects are done in sort of the solitude of the character, and it's one character alone in a room with voice directors and various and animators, because they're watching the mannerisms of the actors. But very rarely have I ever heard, and certainly in my mother's case, as many animated films and projects that she did, she was never in the room with another one of the characters ever. In fact, on Emperor's New Groove, she met everybody aside from Sting, because she did work with him on their song together. But aside from Sting, she didn't meet any of her co-stars until the premiere. So yeah, she did a lot of work, in New York City. And so there was one time where Patrick Warburton, they did meet, I stand corrected, they did meet in the studio at one point in Los Angeles, because her session was over and his session was starting, and they literally were just passing of the night and met each other in the hallway, and that was that.
I guess what I should start is that when they switched the film from Kingdom of the Sun to The Emperor's New Groove, they only kept 2 cast members and kind of wiped the slate clean. So it was David Spade, who stayed on as Cusco, and your mother stayed on as Yzma. So the director did pay compliment to your mother, saying that she technically really didn't know that we kind of switched the film. She just, she was such a professional. She kept giving us the takes that we needed and wanted. And she was so out there and excited and really passionate about it. So that's one thing he did say about the whole entire thing, because it was an ordeal. When you tell Sting you're not going to use any of his songs. And I can't even imagine that conversation with your mother, because your mother had this great song, Snuff Out the Light, and they had to cut it completely. Like, what was that relationship like between your mother and Sting when they got to do that song before it was cut?
Yeah, I was there on all occasions because like I said, I worked for my mother, and so I was with her all the time. I accompanied her. My kids only met Sting once, but they weren't privy to the recording session. My mother and Sting hit it off right from the beginning, and the first time we met him was in his apartment in New York City, and we went up there, and he and my mother and his musical director started to, play around a little bit with the verses, and my mother had a little bit of a difficult time with the way that Sting his process, not his process, but that it was, he sings a little bit behind the beat, and my mother, it was just funny watching them. My mother's trying to figure out how to get it, how to fit it all in, because the song is very wordy, and there's a lot of very quick, patter in it. So it was funny. And I remember sitting in his living room and, looking out of the window out on New York City and thinking, listening to my mother sing and Sting singing backup and at the piano. And I was just like, okay, this is pretty cool. This is pretty damn cool. I'm good. I'm really good, God. Thank you.
I just wish because again, somebody did release a clip of Snuff Out the Light and their rough cut of it. And it looks so fascinating to see. And again, thank gosh they left it on the soundtrack when that was released, along with two other songs that were cut, the love song and the Journey buddy song. So, but the whole thing, it was really sad. Like when you watch the documentary, if anybody can find it, it's very sad to see what an amazing project they had set. But then again, when you get The Emperor's New Groove, this other package of a film that the animators explained in another interview that they really had no time to change anything extremely. They had to go, run and go for it. So what were the new recording sessions like with this new script?
Well, again, so I just want to reflect back once, when we did record Snuff Out the Lights, it was done like I said, in New York City in a recording studio with a full massive orchestra, which was just amazing, and my mother and Sting and Trudy and numerous other background vocals done. So that was the first, that was one time where everybody was in the room at the same time recording for that, which was awesome. As far as the new script was concerned, animation is, and again, people don't really get to see what goes into it. I think voice actors are amazing because of what they can bring to a character that you can visualize without actually ever seeing the actor themselves, their faces. That being said, the behind the scenes folks between the animators as well as the vocal directors, I don't think voice directors get as many kudos as they should, because they really are impressive as to when they are trying to get an actor to bring out a certain quality in a sentence, in a phrase. They are so precise in their ability to explain what they're looking for. And my mother, always the consummate professional, and as we both have said, her voice was unbelievably unique and amazing. She was always able to give you takes that gave them so much material. I'm not sure. I think they had a really hard time choosing many times which direction to go in, because she was so good at giving different, innuendos for different phrases, as was asked by the director. So anytime an actor comes to do a session, so that there's always a director giving them very specific cues. So it makes for an incredible, combination of group of people to come together to when you finally see the product on the screen. It's no wonder that the credits, are just thousands and thousands of people, because animation is absolutely fascinating. And all the characters involved, Patrick Warburton is probably one of the greatest, voice actors ever. And actors, comedy actors in human form as well. John Goodman and David Spade, of course, was just, brilliant. So, there were so many great cast members, and my mother had so much fun with this character, that she loved the character of Yzma, just loved her.
Well, she is one of the rare ones to come back, do a sequel, and do a whole TV series. Who does that? And I kudos to her, because the only other person who did that was Patrick Warburton and Larry the Cable Guy. They're the only three.
And that is right there a testament to how great a movie it was, because it came back as well. There was the sequel, Kronk's New Groove, which wasn't as well received, but then it was still so beloved. Emperor's New Groove was so beloved that they wanted to carry it into television, and that was really so much fun, so much fun. My mother won, an Emmy for her voice work.
I'm just sad they never made the theme park ride for it. You know what I mean? You would think that
know.
Animal Kingdom, we don't need Avatar Land. We need Cusco-topia.
That would be so amazing.
Would you, if that ever were something that was considered in the future, would you like to hear your mother in an attraction like that? Would you give permission to let them use material previously done and have her featured?
Absolutely. My mother was a huge, she enjoyed her years, working under, the Disney banner so much. Everybody who worked there and was involved with all the projects that she did were so incredibly kind and respectful and creative and just, great, collaborators that she would love to be, associated with that character, through eternity, because my mother truly enjoyed what she did. And I think that shows in this film. I think you can see that, everybody who was involved was really enjoying the process. Now the actors, didn't quite have the same pressure, obviously, as the creative team did. And especially going from, one complete, well, not completely different subject matter, but a more serious subject to becoming, this comedy, I know was very difficult for all of the people involved. Not so much for the voice actors, thank goodness. And I think that the respect that certainly my mother had for the creative team in their ability to turn on a dime and make something happen and make something really good happen, I think shows in the work. And I think that there's, it's funny because I think that the women, the powerful women in Disney, I mean, often, obviously, the heroine, becomes powerful one way or another and shows an inner strength. But the women who have been villains have always shown strength. And, they were almost, all of them have been, self-sufficient and have been, empowered and unique and clear about who they are, and not apologetic about who they are. So it was really perfect for my mother to take on, a character that sort of embraced the person she was, not maybe as a villain, obviously, but, owning your uniqueness. And that's, what my mother did in her real life. So she definitely was able to bring that to the character of Yzma.
I guess it's just so strange to see, Disney has embraced it a little bit more and tweeted about it more, which I love. And another film that they have embraced, which your mother was also a part of, it celebrated its 15th anniversary last year, was Holes.
It was Holes, yes. Yeah. Another really great film. It comes from a great book, obviously. Mm-hmm. But the film itself was really, really good. And I think when you watch it more than once, you realize, again, the characters, the depth and the messages that they're sending, are very, truthful and deep.
I love reading your posts because I've been following your mother's Facebook page, but I love that you post about your mother and also of your experiences. You're a fabulous writer because you're so passionate about it and you write from the heart.
Well, I was very lucky. My mother, I'm an only child, and my mother made sure that I traveled with her, most of my life. And we had a really incredible relationship and bond together. And I look at that as it's, a blessing. And I really feel, as my mother did, that blessings are really meant to be shared. And my mother we had this incredible relationship, but we were mother-daughter, and she happened to have been a famous person. But the relationship was very real. And, so to share the times and the fun times, as well as, some of the difficult times, and more challenging periods of our lives together, I think, people can relate to, and I think people appreciate hearing, because it's so hard to understand how celebrities and their, families, how they really, you sort of see them up on a pedestal or on the podium, or, so removed from our life, what we think is our normal, our everyday boring lives. But we're pretty, celebrities are pretty boring and pretty normal and pretty, I mean, as a teenager, I wished, my mother would just, the car door would open up and she would just fall, tumble right out of there and, put me out of my misery because she was, I was embarrassed by her and I was, she was very strict. And there were times when, she would open her mouth and start singing in front of people, and I was, mortified. So, it's like everybody can relate to having, this type of relationship, because you don't have to have a famous person to have that, to know what that feels like. So I really do enjoy, and my mother encouraged me to always be honest and share who we were, because we're just real people, and we're blessed to have each other. And her Facebook page is the Eartha Kitt on Facebook. And then I have, a product line called Simply Eartha, which is a line of accessories that use my mother's words and her handwriting in various forms, of accessories. And it's called Simply Eartha Accessories That Say Something. And, I just try to share who she was as a person. You can see who she was as a performer through, music and YouTube and television and videos and films that live on. But to share who she was as a real person, I think is very unique for people to hear. And I think it's also very empowering, because she was someone who really, felt the fear and did it anyway, and just kept, one foot in front of the other as a single, woman of color, and made it on her own, an orphan and from the deep South, and became an, international, icon, which is, pretty impressive. But yet she was very real. And, she always referred to herself as, I'm just a cotton picker from the South. And she referred to herself as being that real person. But she was so connected to so many different aspects of the, spirituality and nature, that what she was ahead of her time in so many ways. And so I share a lot of these things, her feeling about eating organically and living organically and repurposing and recycling and taking care of the earth. And even her name was Eartha, and her given name was Eartha. And she truly was all about the earth and exercising and being kind and being grateful. And, this is all of how we've sort of come to in this place in our society where everybody's talking about that. And I was truly blessed to have been raised by a woman who knew that on a very integral level. So that's my project in life, is to just share who she was and the teachings that I was blessed to have gotten from her. And as my mother always said, you don't need to be a giant boulder to affect change, to be plopped into the water and to affect change by the ripples. Pebbles affect change as well. It just sometimes takes it longer, and it maybe takes more of them. So that's what my legacy is. I'm blessed to have had her, and I share that piece of her and who she made me and who I am with the world. Like I said earlier, I have incredibly fond memories of the time of creating, Emperor's New Groove, and then subsequently Emperor's New School for, Disney and ABC television. And my mother did too. And, I live with numerous hand-drawn sketches from the team, with birthday wishes that they sent her over the years and different things. And, yeah, so it's really, it's wonderful. They make me smile. Every time I see Yzma, her face always makes me smile.
And I have 3 Disney-themed questions I ask to all of my guests. I call them the Fab 3 questions.
Okay.
So we'll start with the Donald one, which is, as a child, what Disney film was one of your favorites to see in the movie theater?
Fantasia. Because I remember thinking that there were so many different types of animals, creating music, being musical, being, dancing. I mean, hippopotamus is, dancing ballet and also, and it was the music as well as the colors and the movement. So, I remember I grew up with a mother who was a dancer and, and a singer. So music was a big part of our lives. And I just remember being, totally, encapsulated by that whole feeling of the music and the colors and the movement of everything. So that's there you go.
And next, our goofy question. Besides the characters of The Emperor's New Groove, what Disney character do you think would be your best friend if you met them in person?
So I'm going to say Scar from this. I know it's just before you judge anybody. Scar from The Lion King, because I found him to be so over the top, just, fed up with everything in life. And so, feeling like he's got nothing to live for, that his sarcasm, I happen to be a very sarcastic person. So his sarcasm to me was just delightful and as maybe as morbid as that sounds. So that's who I would say off the top of my head.
I love that it's a villain, so I'm all for it, girlfriend. And Jeremy Irons, you can't go wrong with him. You know what I mean?
Genius was he in that. He was just so fabulous.
And our Mickey question. If I asked you to name any Disney song at this very moment, what immediately comes to mind? I
would say, because I love the way that they did this song, and I don't know why it always makes me smile, from Lion King again. I just can't wait to be king.
Well, here's to another 20 years, and let's hope, Kitt, that in these 20 years, we get our secret laboratory roller coaster ride at our Spinach Puffs.
I want to see Spinach Puffs, and I want to see Yzma putting back her head to go on the roller coaster.
I'll smash